Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we have match coverage of Manchester United's first Premier League win of the season, of course with the 1-0 win over Wolverhampton Wanderers. Was it convincing? No. Was it perfect? No. But Manchester United got the result. They got the 3 points that they needed to start the season. So let's get into it and break down what happened. Sadly, this video brings us to the conclusion of the opening weekend of the Premier League season. And I'm sure some of you are sitting there thinking, I wish there was a way that I could watch highlights from all of the games in the league this weekend from anywhere in the world. Well, actually there is a way you can do that, thanks to Surfshark VPN. Surfshark VPN is a VPN provider, which means that with just one click of a button, you can change your location to literally anywhere in the world, which means that you can now watch all of the weekend's highlights on Match of the Day on BBC iPlayer, no matter where you are. Surfshark VPN also allows you to get around geo-blocking, which means those really annoying shows on Netflix or Disney Plus, which are only available normally in the USA, are now once again available from literally anywhere in the world, and once again, you guessed it, it is just one click of a button. As well as providing you with all of this extra content from anywhere in the planet, Surfshark VPN also protects you online, and it stops you from having your data stolen from hackers. It's basically like having Prime Rio Ferdinand and Nemanja Vidic in your defense, protecting your privacy online. That's basically what Surfshark VPN does. It stops those hackers getting to you. If you are someone which wants access to all of this extra content from anywhere in the world and you want to be safe online, Surfshark VPN really is the tool for you. And now, thanks to them kindly sponsoring this video, you can use code AJAnalysis, which will get you an extra 3 months of Surfshark VPN, literally at zero cost. If you are interested, make sure to use the link in the description down below. I really do recommend that you check it out. But we are just going to crack on straight to the tactics board and talk about what we saw in this game. And the first thing I want to talk about is Manchester United building the ball from the back, from goal kicks in particular. Where, as we expected and as we called here on the channel, United looked to use a structure which looked a little bit like this. Luke Shaw often dropping into the box, Rafael Varane doing something similar, United kind of going for this sort of build-up structure. At times it rotated, at times it was Lisandro Martinez deeper, at times Rafael Varane would swap with someone, but it was this sort of structure. Wolves kind of countered this and approached it with a 4-4-2 shape. However, again, as we anticipated here on the channel, United were able to outnumber Wolves in these positions. And as a result, United found it quite easy to play the ball out from the back. This was an area where, United found it quite easy. Onana had a lot of touches, Rafael Varane did, Luke Shaw did. All of these players had a big involvement in the opening stages of the game. However, there was one problem for United, and that was that Wolves didn't really engage them and really put pressure on them, and they kind of sat back in a bit more of a passive manner, making it difficult for United to progress the ball. So it felt like United's plan basically was to get the ball in these positions, move the ball backwards, something United done a lot during the first 30 minutes of the game, and I think the intention was to kind of draw Wolves onto them in the hope that they could then kind of play around them and move into different positions. And to an extent that happened. There were times when Wolves would get drawn out by this play by United. It was good play in the first phase, but the problem was there was just then no movement in the midfield. Bruno Fernandes, no real movement. Mason Mount, no real movement. Casemiro, not great movement, and when he did move well, he was horrendous receiving the ball. So this made it quite difficult for United. Wolves were initially being passive, and then when United were kind of executing the game plan, drawing Wolves onto them, they just didn't have the sharpness to move the ball forward. And before we go any further, that's what we need to talk about, the sharpness of these players. It was really bad. It was a really bad performance individually from a lot of these players. If we just quickly go through the team, I think Andre Onana played really well in goal. I think he was one of United's better players. I think Rafael Varane played really very well. Luke Shaw I thought looked rusty, not very sharp, and also uncomfortable with the position he was asked to play further up the pitch, which we'll come on to. Lisandro Martinez looked good on the ball, but very rash and reckless off the ball. Wan-Bissaka looked very technically limited when receiving the ball. Casemiro lost the ball, I think it was 17 times in the game. He didn't scan his surroundings when he was receiving. The amount of times he was receiving with his back to play and getting caught was ridiculous. Bruno Fernandes giving the ball away far too often, losing possession 20 times. Mason Mount, in my opinion, done better. Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes combined for loss of possession 37 times. Mason Mount only 9, he played well, but his movement still wasn't good enough off the ball. He should have made himself more available. Antony had a good first half, was a good outlet, but second half technically poor. Marcus Rashford, good when he got the ball, but misused in this system. He shouldn't have been up front. And Garnacho on the left wing, as much as we rate him here on the channel, was terrible. Absolutely terrible. His first touch was shocking for a professional footballer. So before we break anything down tactically further, I just wanted to go through that because individually it was really poor from a lot of United players. And of course that is something we need to talk about. The system, like a good system, has an effect on good players. But a good system is only going to get you so far if your players play poorly. It's the same vice versa. Your players can play really well, but if the system is bad, it doesn't quite work. What we saw in this game was a poor system and also terrible individual performances. The technical ability on display in this game was genuinely pathetic. The inability to control 4-yard passes and complete 5-yard passes was really worrying. Hopefully we put it down to a little bit of rust and not being fully sharp, but it was concerning. So that's kind of a way of kind of summing up the Manchester United performance. There were problems individually but also tactically. But let's go back to the tactical side of it, because despite these sort of problems playing out from the back, the lack of movement in forward areas, United did still dominate possession, particularly in the first half of the game, allowing them to move a little bit further up the pitch. Especially because once again Wolves were at times passive in a 4-4-2. Not all the time passive, but decent spells of the game they were a bit more passive. From here, United then looked to build possession with a back three and moved to a 3-box-3 shape. We saw Rafael Varane, Lisandro Martinez and Wan-Bissaka forming the back three, Luke Shaw, Casemiro the double pivot, with Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount in front of them. But again, United had problems. And again, it came from an intensity, a lack of movement, a lack of rotation, all things which really go against what we saw in pre-season. For example, Wolves were quite happy in these situations. Luke Shaw's inverting, so Wolves were like, okay, we'll move Neto narrow, that deals with Luke Shaw. Wan-Bissaka's dropping deeper. Okay, Nunes at times can pounce and put pressure on, and if Wolves want to, they can do this to apply pressure to the ball. There were also times where they were more passive, more sitting off in a 4-4-2. But what was clear, no matter what Wolves were doing, was that the shape wasn't quite working for United, because Wolves were defending really well. What didn't make sense from here was the lack of movement from United players. Something we saw in pre-season, and something I have said several times we will see this season, is rotations, different systems. We didn't see that in this game. There was no problem solving from the players on the pitch, and it didn't feel like there was much direction coming from the dugout either. When it isn't working, change it. Can Wan-Bissaka push further forward or pull wider? Can Luke Shaw at times drop a little bit deeper? Could Mason Mount have rotated deep at times? There was a lack of changing in structures. United could have gone to a 2-4 shape at times. Something like this would have allowed them to have a lot more success against this Wolves side. United didn't problem solve, and again it felt like a real lack of sharpness. It felt like a lack of sharpness technically, physically, in terms of muscular battles. They weren't winning the duels. In terms of speed, it felt rusty. Speed of thought. It was a really weird flat performance from United. The main problem for me though was in the middle area of the pitch. Like I've said already, Lisandro Martinez was good on the ball, Rafael Varane played well, Wan-Bissaka looked limited. He was often the spare man in build-up, when Nunes was drawn a little bit deeper. Wan-Bissaka was the spare man. United just didn't bother using him because they didn't seem to trust him that much. Casemiro, again, on the ball, he was so poor in this game. I think he had a really good year last year, but he needs to improve on the ball because this performance was shoddy. It was really very poor in possession. Now, the structure didn't help him because the players around him did not look comfortable. Again, we've already spoken about a lack of rotation and movements from key players, but the players who were in these fixed positions didn't look comfortable. Luke Shaw can invert as a fullback in spells. Absolutely, he is capable of doing that. But when you ask him to play full 90 minutes as an inverted fullback alongside Casemiro, he just didn't look comfortable receiving the ball. Now, there was the odd time that Wan-Bissaka would do it. Again, he did not look comfortable. This made problems for United. Of course, Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount not looking sharp, not making the ball stick in the case of Fernandes, not moving into different areas, made it really difficult for United to progress the ball forward. The other problem they had was that the gaps were far too big from the box to the back three. You expect Casemiro and Luke Shaw to be dropping in here to receive the ball off the centre-backs, but it wasn't the case. They were pushed far too high. The midfielders are too high, the double pivot is too high, and it makes it quite easy for Wolves to kind of sit in front of them like this and let the United defenders have the ball. It was really quite easy from Wolves, but because United just was so flat, lacking in sharpness, lacking in movement, the rotations, the quick patterns of play, we just didn't see it at all. Now, the one area of success United did have to an extent was out wide. Because Pedro Neto, for example, was tucking in on Luke Shaw like this, and Wolves were making the pitch very compact, it did mean United could get the ball quite comfortably to Garnacho in particular on the left-hand side. The problem from here was that Garnacho was really poor. His first touch was just not on it. Another day this could have worked really well. You expect Garnacho most of the time to have the beating of his fullback and play really well. In this game, he just didn't. His first touch was poor, and he seemed to struggle with the upper body strength of Semedo. So United had potential for success here, and this is something you can look at as a positive moving forward. For example, had Rashford played left wing, I think it would have been a different story. On the right hand side, United had a bit more joy, drawing Wolves to this side of the pitch, going backwards and then switching the ball out to Antony. Antony had a really good first half, probably United's best attacking outlet in that first half. However, again, second half, technically, he was just really poor. His first touch was poor, he failed some really simple passes. So again, I'm not too sure what happened there. Despite this, United did still cause problems in these wide areas, thanks to the ability of Bruno Fernandes to underlap in this position and Mason Mount to do the same on the other side, allowing United to go 2 versus 1 against the two fullbacks. But again, it just lacked the cutting edge it needed, the zip on the pass, the completion of the pass, the accuracy of the pass, but also the first touch. It was just, again, a real lack of sharpness from the players. The other problem was that when they did execute the pass and did get into these areas, Manchester United, they got themselves into a good position. There was just no movement in the middle. Marcus Rashford was offering little in terms of box threat. I felt a bit sorry for Rashford because he just wasn't able to get the ball in this game. When he did get the ball in these deeper positions, he actually done really well. But he didn't get the ball enough, so I did feel sorry for him. However, he could have helped himself with his movement in the middle. Again, it just wasn't good enough. It wasn't sharp enough. So when United, on the rare occasion, did get into a good position, there was nothing really to aim for. And that kind of sums up the problems for United in possession. Now, as a result of United struggling in possession, what we saw as the game went on was the need to commit more players forward, because clearly the players that are doing it at the moment aren't doing well enough. We need more support in forward areas. So as the game went on, Luke Shaw would push a little bit higher, Casemiro was pushing a little bit higher, Aaron Wan-Bissaka was pushing a little bit higher, trying to commit men forward to try and break this Wolves defence down. Wolves are defending very well, United are attacking poorly. So throw a few extra men forward, you might break them down. The problem was, United still struggled to break them down, and also they were now just asking to be counter-attacked. United looked so vulnerable in these situations. The ball carrying ability of the Wolves midfield caused a lot of problems. Matheus Nunes was everything that Manchester United didn't have in this game. He was absolutely incredible, by far for me the best player on the pitch. But Lamina was turning players well in these areas, Gomez was doing the same, Cunha done a really good job of dropping deep, carrying the ball forward, and poor old Casemiro in midfield was just completely overwhelmed. I think he played quite poorly from a defensive point of view, but he certainly wasn't helped because he was just isolated in his positions. There's times when he's 3 or 4 versus 1 with Wolves running forward with the ball. The United fullbacks have been caught high up the pitch, out of position. It's really poor rest defence from Manchester United, and that was really concerning. It was a desperation to try and create something going forward, chuck extra players into the final third, hoping to create something, but it left United so vulnerable in this game, and that really is a concern. United also had mixed success in the way that they pressed out of possession as well. They used a very similar structure to what was in place last season, and at times this didn't work at all. For example, Dawson's going to receive the ball, and on the situations when he has time, Antony here is responsible for marking 2 players, Aït-Nouri and Dawson. So as he comes across, it's quite easy for Wolves to drop in, play a quick pass like this, and now they're forward out of the press. It happens a bit too easily, a bit too often. It could also happen directly from the goalkeeper. A little flicked pass from Sarr out to Aït-Nouri allows Wolves to get out of these situations. So again, that was a concern. The United team then collapses back, but it just leaves so much room for the midfield to cover, which is a real problem. However, at the same time, there were situations when it was really very successful. When United timed it a little bit better, got the connections right, were able to mark that double pivot, we saw plenty of situations where United were winning the ball in these areas, and from there, you look very dangerous. You've got Wolves in an exposed position, you can attack them, you can hurt them. Again, the final ball was off, it was poor, it lacked sharpness, But this was an area where, whilst there were concerns with the pressing structure, you could certainly see areas where it could work moving forward, because United, at least from this position, did actually create some pretty decent chances. I think overall you can probably see that despite the result, I really wasn't very pleased with the performance, and there's a lot, and I mean a lot, for Erik ten Hag to work on. One thing we do need to consider is that it's very, very early in the season, incredibly early. You've got a new goalkeeper, which completely changes the way that you play. It's going to take time to get used to that. You've got Mason Mount, who's a different midfield profile. It's going to take time to get used to that. What was concerning for me was tactically from Erik ten Hag's point of view. Initially, I think he got it wrong. I said in my preview, I thought Rashford should have started on the left-hand side, Sancho up front, because in my opinion, Garnacho isn't ready to start games just yet. But aside from that, it was the lack of rotations on the pitch which was concerning. Now, is that Erik ten Hag's instructions? Has he got it wrong? Or is that the players kind of bottling it a little bit from a tactical point of view on the pitch? I'm not too sure. The other concern, though, for me was physically. Just how easy it was for Wolves. This United squad, a lot of the idea behind the rebuild has been improving the intensity of the United team, the physicality, the stamina. We didn't really see that in effect today. Of course, bringing someone like Rasmus Højlund in is going to change that, because he's a real physical specimen. Of course he is. He will affect the team. But it was still just too easy for Wolves. They looked quicker than Manchester United. They looked stronger than Manchester United. And then from a technical point of view, they looked like they know how to control a football, which wasn't the case for the team in red. They were just super, super poor on the ball, Manchester United. Now, to give a bit of context, it's not all doom and gloom, alright? There's a lot of room for improvement from this performance. However, this is one of those games that in the past, I assure you, United would have lost this. So having 3 points at the start of the season is huge. We also saw areas where United could be dangerous. On the press, I thought they looked really, really decent. And there were also transitional situations where Mason Mount is getting on the half turn, playing really well, moving the ball forward. United just lacked that last bit of decision, which another day they perhaps have, and they really hurt Wolves. The other thing is, United were able to isolate 1 versus 1 situations, and that is what Erik ten Hag wants to do. So from a tactical point of view, that did work. He was just unfortunate really that Garnacho was poor on the day and couldn't make the most of it. Another day, Garnacho against Semedo in a 1 versus 1 situation, and it's happening 7, 8, 9 times in a game, you would expect Garnacho to have some success. So whilst the performance was poor, and, you know, structurally and individually it wasn't good enough, there were still signs that it will be alright. Ten Hag definitely has work. The distances in midfield are wrong. That midfield was far too disconnected from the back three at times. The rotations weren't there. There needs to be better movement off the ball, but even on the ball. The structures need to change. United cannot afford, with the current set of fullbacks, to build in a set structure where one fullback is always inverted. They're just not good enough to do it. There needs to be more rotations, which we did see in pre-season, so hopefully we will see it moving forward. This was not a great performance, but 3 points in the Premier League is 3 points. It's absolutely huge. You have to take them where you can. I think that probably just about wraps up today's video for me. United weren't good enough, but there's plenty to build on. Give Erik ten Hag some time, let the players settle in, let the players build some sharpness, get used to playing alongside each other again, build that match fitness. Yes, they've had pre-season, but it's nothing close to the intensity we see in the Premier League, so give it some time. Don't worry too much. It was a bad performance, but we've seen those before. Wolves are always a tricky side to play. Give Erik ten Hag some time, and then judge the team in a couple of months' time. For now, back the process. 3 points is a big 3 points. Let's see what happens moving forward, basically. Let me know your thoughts, though, in the comments down below, because I think that is all I have to say for today's video. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.